You did everything right. You got the grades, the job, the relationship, the apartment that finally has good light. You checked every box the world handed you. And somewhere in the quiet of a Tuesday night, a thought arrives anyway, uninvited. Is this it? You are not broken. You are not ungrateful. You've just discovered the oldest trick your own mind ever played on you. That if you could just rearrange the outside, the inside would finally settle. So you chase the next box, and the next, and the horizon keeps its distance. In 2016, a writer named Brianna Wiest published 101 short essays built around a single, quietly devastating idea. That the one thing you never thought to change is the exact thing that would change everything. You don't need a new life, you need a new mind. Here's where most people expect a lecture, and Wiest refuses to give one. She opens her book not with a promise, but with a fact of evolution. Out of all the ways a fragile, slow, clawless animal could have survived, our ancestors survived on one thing: the ability to imagine a reality that didn't exist yet, and then move toward it. We are the species that thinks its world into being, which sounds like a nice sentiment on a coffee mug, until Wiest turns it on you. Because if thought is the tool that built cities and cured diseases, it is also the tool quietly building your worst days. Her line for it is plain: to change their lives, she writes, they had to change their minds, not their circumstances, their minds. And that is a far more uncomfortable proposition, because it means the problem was never out there. So you do what everyone does. You try to fix the outside. New city, new partner, new plan. Wiest has a picture for this that's hard to unsee. Imagine you're driving, she says, and you spot a road sign pointing the opposite way from where you meant to go. So you stop the car, get out, and try to physically turn the sign instead of just turning your car around. That's what it looks like to change your circumstances and expect a different inner life. You rearrange the furniture of your world and wait to feel new, but the feeling doesn't live in the furniture. Elsewhere, she calls the whole world a hall of mirrors and points out that you can spend your entire life running from mirror to mirror, trying to smash each reflection you don't like. Or you can let go of the idea that the reflection was ever the thing that needed fixing. Which raises the question, if the world isn't the problem, then what am I actually looking at when I look at my life? Wiest's answer is the hinge the whole book turns on. The world is not as it is, she writes. It is as we are. You are not seeing reality. You are seeing your reality, filtered, colored, and quietly edited by the mind doing the looking. She walks through the cognitive biases that do the editing and borrows a warning from the psychologist Daniel Kahneman. The confidence you feel in a belief, he says, is not a measure of how true it is, only of how neat a story your mind has built around it. Sit with that. The version of your life that feels most obviously, painfully true might just be your best told story. And a story, unlike a life sentence, can be rewritten. That is the crack of light the whole book pours through. But knowing this changes nothing, and Wiest is honest about why. There is a gap, she says, between knowing and doing, and almost all of human suffering lies inside it. You know you should rest, and you don't. You know the relationship is over, and you stay. You know the thought is a lie, and you believe it anyway. So she inverts the usual advice. You will not think your way into a new way of acting, she argues. It's the reverse. It's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than to think your way into a new way of acting. Small gestures, repeated, quietly reteach the mind. And yet, even armed with that, most people stall. They circle their own good life and never step inside it, which points at something stranger underneath, something Wiest names without flinching. Many of the people who look happiest are the ones fighting hardest to stay that way. Because, and this is the line that stops readers cold, most people don't want to be happy, which is why they aren't. Not consciously. But each of us, Wiest explains, carries an inner thermostat for how good we're willing to let life feel, a ceiling the psychologist Gay Hendricks calls your upper limit. Cross it, let things get too good, too calm, too loved, and something in you gets nervous. So you pick a fight. You manufacture a crisis. You find the flaw in the perfect thing. You self-sabotage your way back down to the temperature you've always known, and you call it bad luck. Naming this is the first genuine act of power in the whole book, because a ceiling you can't see runs your life. A ceiling you can see, you can raise. The trap was never that good things don't come. It's that you keep sending them away. So how do you raise it? We start somewhere almost insultingly small, your daily routine. The untamed mind, she says, is a frightening place to live, and the point of a routine is not productivity, it's peace. When you decide in advance what your ordinary hours will hold, you stop leaving yourself at the mercy of every passing mood and impulse. You quiet the part of the brain that treats an ordinary Wednesday like a threat. It's the least glamorous idea in the book, and maybe the most quietly radical, that freedom isn't the absence of structure, but the safety structure creates. You don't rise to the level of your inspiration, she suggests. You fall to the level of your habits, and you had better make them a soft place to land. But structure only holds a life that can feel its way through it, and that means facing the thing most of us have spent years learning to avoid. Our feelings. Wiest's most piercing essays are about what we do with them, which is, mostly, run. We treat sadness like a malfunction, anxiety like an enemy, discomfort like a sign we took a wrong turn. And in fighting them, she argues, we manufacture the exact suffering we were trying to escape. Suffering, she writes, is just the refusal to accept what is. The feeling isn't the wound. The war against the feeling is. So her definition of healing is almost anticlimactically simple. Healing, she writes, is really just letting yourself feel. Not fixing, not analyzing, not conquering. Feeling, and then letting the feeling move through you and out the way it was always designed to. Which means the emotion you are most desperate to get rid of right now might be the one carrying the message you most need to hear, especially the one that feels like nothing at all. Because the scariest state, Wiest says, isn't sadness, it's numbness, and we get it exactly backwards. Your numbness isn't feeling nothing, she writes. It's feeling everything, and never having learned to process anything at all. Numb is not empty. Numb is a room so overfull that you've stopped being able to tell one thing from another. Grief and love and fear, all stacked in the dark. And when you try to reach in and force yourself to feel differently, she brings back the road sign. You're out of the car again, wrestling the signpost, when all you ever had to do was turn the wheel. The way out of numb is not to feel less, it's to feel it, one thing at a time, in the light, to open the door to the crowded room instead of pretending it's empty. That is the unglamorous work no one posts about. And this is where Wiest is at her most tender, so let's stay careful and honest with it. Some feelings frighten us because they seem too big to survive. She meets that fear directly. Sadness will not kill you, she writes. Depression won't either, but fighting it will. The exhaustion, she means, comes less from the weather itself than from the endless war against admitting it's raining. She reaches for a line from the researcher Brené Brown. You cannot selectively numb, Brown says. When you numb the hard feelings, you numb joy and gratitude and wonder right along with them. There is no valve that lets out only the pain. So the same openness that lets grief pass through you is the only door wide enough for joy to walk back in. You don't get to feel less of the dark without also feeling less of the light. The heart, it turns out, only has the one setting, which reframes the feeling we run from most, fear. We treat fear as a stop sign, proof we're on the wrong path. Wiest flips it into a compass. Fear, she writes, equals interest. Fear doesn't mean you want to escape. It means you're standing at the edge of something you actually care about. The thing you're indifferent to doesn't scare you. So the presence of fear isn't the red light, it's the arrow. The opposite of love was never hate, she says. It's indifference, which means the racing heart before the hard conversation, the first day, the blank page. That isn't your body warning you off. It's your body telling you where the aliveness is. The uncomfortable feeling you've been reading as turned back has been saying this way the whole time. And once you stop fleeing the fear, you're finally still enough to ask the harder question underneath it. Who is the one doing all this feeling? Wiest answers with the most quietly astonishing image in the book. Imagine, she says, that we laid all of your organs out on a table in front of you. You'd look at your heart, and you would not think that is me. You'd think that is my heart. Your hands, my hands. Your brain, even your thoughts, my thoughts. But then, who is the I doing the owning? You are not your body. You are not your job, your history, your fears, or the anxious voice narrating this very moment. You are the awareness that can watch all of it and remain. This is the beating heart of the whole book and the deepest meaning of its promise. You don't need a new life. You don't even need a new self. You need to remember the one who's been quietly watching your whole life from behind your own eyes, untouched and already whole. And once you know you are the watcher and not the watched, you can finally loosen your grip on things, on outcomes, on the people you were sure you couldn't lose. Wiest writes with startling grace about how the people we once loved become strangers again. Not with a bang, usually. Just a slow drift, until one day an old song plays while you're standing in the checkout line holding your basket, and grief ambushes you between the milk and the register. We are each, she says, the center of our own small universe. And now and then 2 universes overlap, and the collision, even when it ends, changes the shape of you forever. That's not a tragedy to be fixed. That's the cost of having loved it all. Nothing that is real is ever fully lost. It just changes form. The way you have, and the way you're about to. But here's the twist that turns the whole book back on you. All that love you've spent your life searching for out there, in the right person, the right approval, the right room. Wiest says you've been looking in the wrong direction the whole time. Because everything outside you, she argues, is a mirror. All hatred, she writes, is self-hatred. The trait that enrages you in someone else is almost always the one you can't bear to see in yourself. You are not in the world, she writes. The world is in you. And everything is feedback. Every person who irritates you, wounds you, or dazzles you is handing you information about yourself if you're brave enough to read it. It's a merciless idea and a liberating one, both at once. Because if the world is a mirror, then you were never at war with other people. You were at war with the parts of you they kept reflecting back, which finally explains the love. The love you really want is your own, Wiest writes. What you're seeking in someone else is what you aren't giving to yourself. You were never actually starving for another person's approval. You were starving for your own, and outsourcing the job to people who could never quite finish it. That's why the reassurance never lasts, why the compliment fades by morning, why no amount of being chosen ever makes you feel chosen enough. The hole was always the wrong shape for anyone else to fill. Your truest connection, she says, isn't the one who completes you. It's the one who shows you to yourself. And the very first person who has to do that job is you. Not as a slogan on a mirror, as a practice. Because loving yourself, she insists, is an action, not a feeling, which quietly changes what a whole good life is even made of. So Wiest goes after the biggest lie of the achievement age, that the goal is the point. Follow your passion, we're told. Chase the summit. Arrive. But she draws a line most of us have never been shown. A good life, she writes, isn't passionate, it's purposeful. Passion is the spark that lights the fire. Purpose is the kindling that keeps the flame burning all night. Passion is a feeling that comes and goes. Purpose is a direction you keep choosing. She borrows an image from the veteran and writer Eric Greitens. The deepest happiness isn't the moment you reach the mountaintop and throw your fists in the air. It's the slower, stranger joy of falling in love with the climb itself. The view lasts a minute. The climb is your whole life. And if you built your entire self around the minute, no summit will ever be tall enough to hold you. So how do you actually measure a life, if not by what you pile up? Wiest reframes the whole scoreboard. A good life, she writes, is not measured by what you do. It's about what you are. And then the line that reorders everything, the point of anything is not what you get from having done it. It's who you become from having gone through it. The promotion isn't the point. The person the work forged is. The heartbreak isn't a waste. The depth it carved is what you carry forward. Under this measure, nothing that stretched you was ever truly lost. and nothing you merely acquired was ever truly gained. You stop asking, "What did I get?" and start asking, "Who did this make me?" And the moment that question replaces the other one, the endless, exhausting chase for more quietly begins to lose its grip on you. Which frees Wiest to say the most counterintuitive thing in the whole book: if you want to be happy, stop chasing happiness. She reaches for the philosopher Alan Watts, who put it perfectly: to hold your breath is to lose your breath. Grip happiness too tightly, make it the goal, monitor yourself for it, and you squeeze the life right out of it. She points to the physician Andrew Weil, who called the modern demand to be happy all the time a uniquely modern, uniquely destructive idea. Happiness, Wiest says, was never meant to be hunted. It's a byproduct, she writes, of doing things that are challenging, meaningful, beautiful, and worthwhile. You don't catch it head on. It arrives sideways, while your attention is on something that actually matters. So you stop chasing the feeling, and you go do the worthy thing. And somewhere in the middle of the worthy thing, without noticing, you look up and you're already home. None of it, though, happens to you by accident. And this is Wiest at her most bracing. You alone are responsible for your life. Not to blame for everything that happened to you, but responsible now for what you do with the one mind you've got. And the good news hidden in that hard truth is how small the first step is allowed to be. She quotes the writer Cheryl Strayed: "Real change happens on the level of the gesture. It's one person doing one thing differently than they did before. Not a total reinvention by Monday. One gesture, one boundary held, one kinder sentence to yourself. One time you feel the fear and stay in the car and turn the wheel. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. The mountain of a changed life is climbed exactly one small, deliberate, unglamorous gesture at a time, and every single one of them is yours to make. And when you begin, gesture by gesture, something disorienting happens that almost everyone mistakes for a breakdown. The old life stops fitting. Things that used to comfort you feel hollow. People you used to belong to feel far away. The map you'd been following goes blank. It feels, Wiest warns, exactly like falling apart. Even her essay on healing from anxiety refuses the easy promise. She writes openly about the years, the therapy, the ordinary daily work of it, and one line she keeps close, borrowed from recovery. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. We don't heal in isolation or in a single triumphant moment. We heal in reconnection to other people and to the self we abandoned somewhere along the way. But that hollowed out, map-gone feeling isn't the ending. There's an old Greek word for what it actually is, and most people run from it right when it's about to save them. The word is metanoia. Wiest ends her entire book on it, the profound, disorienting change of heart that a person moves through when they finally begin to transform. It is not you breaking, it is you molting. The discomfort you feel is not the collapse of your life. It's the old self loosening its grip so a truer one can come through. Everything that felt like loss was the shedding. And this is why loving yourself is an action, not a feeling. Because on the days the feeling isn't there, you keep making the gestures anyway, and the gestures are what carry you across. You will not think your way into this new self. You'll act your way there, one small choice at a time, right through the part that feels like falling apart. What's dying was never you. It was only everything that stood in the way of you. So come back to that quiet Tuesday night, and the question that started all of this, is this it? Wiest's whole answer is that the question was never really about your life. It was about the mind you were living it with. You were never trapped by your circumstances. You were trapped in one story about them. And the astonishing, terrifying, freeing truth is that the storyteller was you all along. The world is not as it is as you are. Change the one who's looking, and every single thing you look at quietly changes with it. You don't need a new life. You needed a new mind, and it's been yours this whole time, waiting behind your own eyes for you to finally turn around and use it. That's the whole book, and the whole promise. If it moves something in you, sit with the one essay you needed most today. Then go make the one small gesture it asked of you, and I'll see you in the next one.